Should Penny Hardaway be in the Hall of Fame?
Alrighty. Originally, I had him as a yes. I'm going to switch him for a no. When you look at a player like Penny Hardaway, his peak in the league was tremendous. I think it's a similar situation to John Wall, though. His peak in the league was great, and then it just his drop off was sharp and sudden, and unfortunately, I don't think he did enough in the league as far as regular season wise, because he didn't have playoffs. He didn't have the significant playoff success. Um, Unfortunately, I don't think he did enough in this league. In that short amount of time that he was elite in his position, because when he was on, he was on, and Penny Hardaway was one of the best players in the league. When he was on. Unfortunately, I don't see him making the Hall of Fame. It's just another case of you know a quick rise and then almost seemingly even quicker fall off, and that's basically what happened.
Yeah. So my pick on this, and I understand, Penny Hardaway has been out of the NBA for a while now. So I think the last time he played was like 07, 08. So it's been a minute. But I'm gonna go with yes. And I'm gonna go with yes because even though he doesn't quite have like the accolades when we're talking about like these other guys today, like you said, like Mo, like I mean, he only made like 4 All-Star teams, only 3 All-NBA teams. However, when he made the All-NBA teams, like he was really good. Like you said, his peak was one of the best in the league. All-NBA first team back-to-back years. I mean, there's a lot of guys who, even if they make it, I think making it one time, like depending on the situation, that might be enough. There's some guys that have only made it once. There's some guys that have never made it. But to make it back-to-back years is impressive in itself. I mean, in 1995, I mean, they made the finals, and he was a huge part in that team. You know what I mean? And then the next year, they followed back up, and their record improves by 3 games. But you know what people don't talk about is that Shaq missed 30 games that year. So, but Penny played every game, and he was third in MVP voting that year. Like he was really, for the regular season that year, he was their best player. And then he continued it on for another couple of years, and then ultimately that's when like the injuries kind of struck. But I think when you factor in just how many people, I feel like Penny Hardaway's influence has probably carried over more than some of the players we even have talked about today. Not necessarily all of them, but some of them, and it's still prevalent, and it's definitely like the most it's the most glaring, I guess, like right now, because most of these other guys, like I feel like they all kind of like retired in the last like decade or so, or they're still going. Whereas Penny Hardaway, it's felt like his career has been over for like 2 decades now because of like the injuries and stuff like that. But I still like, I think his presence is still felt in the NBA community. So while he only had maybe like 7 or so years where he was like a top tier type of point guard, there was still a point in time, like in 96, he was the best point guard in the league that year. And you could maybe make that argument for the year before too. So like back-to-back years, best point guard in the league. I think it's like kind of a similar situation to our boy Mo D Rose, where there were a couple years where he was the best point guard in the NBA. Now Penny never won like an MVP like him, but I still think like given that, and given that he had a decent amount of postseason success, I mean back-to-back conference finals appearances, made the finals, and again I think that 96 season is just like something that doesn't get talked about a lot because you just naturally think, like it was Shaq and Penny, and Shaq was the 1, Penny was the 2. Like, nah, like Penny was the biggest reason why they were as successful as they were that year. So I'm going to go, I know it's a short-lived peak, but I'm still going to go with yes to Penny Hardaway. I think he will get in the Hall of Fame eventually. There are guys that have not been in it for so long, like Jack Sikma or Bobby Jones or Bob Dandridge, and eventually all those guys have made it. I think you'll see the same thing with Penny Hardaway. I can't guarantee he'll get in next year or the year after, but someday he will get in, and I'm rolling with yes.
All right, so before I get to cooking, let me just give Penny Hardaway his praise. Penny Hardaway, you were a phenomenal at your peak. there was a reason people were comparing you, saying you were going to be the next Jordan. I mean, you and Shaq, that 1-2 combo, phenomenal. But let's be honest, Penny Hardaway only had 2 elite years of basketball in him. At the 94-95 season, 95-96 season. Yeah, he was an all-star 2 times after that, but he wasn't the same player. It was clear that he had regressed. Now, in Penny Hardaway's career, he made 2 Eastern Conference Finals. He made it to the NBA Finals as well, losing to the Houston Rockets by Hakeem Olajuwon. But to me personally, and he's also like I said, he's a four-time All-Star. But to me, Penny Hardaway, you do not have the longevity to be in the Hall of Fame. Yeah, you averaged 20 points per game for 4 years straight, but I mean that's about it. I mean, when I think of Penny Hardaway, all I can think of is the few years that he was with Shaquille O'Neal. I don't have any iconic Penny Hardaway moments in mind. I don't have any reason to think that Penny Hardaway belongs in the Hall of Fame.
Pretty heavy feelings about Penny Hardaway not making a Hall of Fame.
Being honest.
Did you want to go first, Devin? I have a question for Jay, but I'll wait until after you go.
Okay, I'll go ahead first then. I chose yes for Penny in the Hall of Fame, and like you said, Jay, that peak might be short-lived, but especially when compared to some of the other guys that we've been debating tonight, he peaked so high compared to where some of these other guys have been at. He was so dominant during those years. He did have really good playoff success during those years, obviously not getting a ring, but he was a big part of some very successful Orlando Magic teams. And when you consider just how dominant he was for that stretch, for me, it's enough to give him a bit of a nod in. Obviously, like you mentioned, Jay, like it's tough to think of those iconic moments outside of him in Orlando with Shaq, but he was so good for that 4 or 5 year stretch. He did have enough team success for a couple of years with Orlando that I'm willing to give him the nod here because he just peaked so high that it's enough to get him over the edge.
So, go ahead. No, go ahead.
In my opinion, if you're going to throw somebody in the Hall of Fame for 4 good years of basketball, you're just letting anybody in.
So,
but there's very few guys that have had like 4 to 5 years as good as Penny Hardaway was during those 4 to 5 years.
And there's a reason like they'd only have those 4 or 5 years and we'd even consider them.
Yeah, the thing I was going to say, though, is just like, I mean, just looking through some of the Hall of Famers that have like maybe not quite the resume per se as like Penny Hardaway, like there's guys in there like Calvin Murphy and Bob Dandridge and David Thompson and Jamal Wilkes and Bill Walton. Like they didn't have too many great quality years. You know, some of them do have championships, but not a lot of them have that many championships, if anything. And a lot of them weren't playing as well as Penny Hardaway was when he was, you know, in the finals and back-to-back conference finals appearances too. So with that being said, and a lot of those guys are in the Hall of Fame too. So I think given that, and because it's not like he's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer because he's already missed that chance, but at some point in time, I feel confident that he will make it just because like we've seen it so many times. And some of those guys I even mentioned, I feel like the today's generation probably resonates more with like a Penny Hardaway than maybe like a Bob Dandridge or a Spencer Haywood or something like that, like, or a Guy Rogers. And I feel like that we can all agree on. Like more people are like, yo, like I want a Penny jersey, or like I'm a model my game after Penny Hardaway or something like that, than some of these other guys that have made the Hall of Fame. And because of that, I feel like the influence definitely does matter. And I think that'll help him get in at one point. You know, you just got to get in once. And especially if there is like, I hate to say like if there's a weak class, then he'll get in, because then it almost sounds like it's like pity at that point. But I think eventually we'll come to a point where it's like there will be an opening and he's going to find his name in there. You know what I mean? So yeah.
So my thing when it comes to influence, right? So when we're talking about Gilbert Arenas going into the Hall of Fame one day, are we gonna say that, hey, I'm not gonna lie, Gilbert Arenas deserves to be in the Hall of Fame strictly because of how he influenced Ja Morant? Is that gonna be a topic of discussion?
Bruh.
I think you're being a little disingenuous with
That's
that.
crazy.
Yeah, well, first of all, Gilbert Arenas is in the Hall of Fame, and so I don't know.
Oh, my fault.
I don't know
Don't
how that would
disrespect
make sense.
Don't disrespect
Second of
Gilbert.
all, I think that would just make the league look worse if that's who they said is in. Bruh.
Hold on. I
Did
tried
you
to get
do
that one out.
Did you do that on purpose, Jay?
I tried to get that one out, bro.
Yeah, man.
I
It's
mean,
crazy.
but seriously, I respect the influence part, but I don't think that should be a real talking point when discussing if he should be in the Hall of Fame. To be honest, like I get it though. I understand. I understand it, but
Why when you just talked about Gilbert Arenas and John Morant, why did I just think like it in my head? I'm like, you know what? One day, like, what if they just had like a commercial where like Gilbert Arenas is playing like John Morant's wingman, and then like at the end it says like a motto that says like "shoot or shoot" or something. Like,
What's wrong with you, man?
bro, I don't know why. I was like, I feel like Gilbert would be like patting him on the back, like helping him out, and then